Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka.
It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka, the anime podcast, where me and my closest friends come together and we talk about animes that we watched over the past 2 weeks. We pretend we're a book club, but we watch anime, and we have a very special one that we watched this week because we are doing our beginning of the year flashback in time to any anime we wanted to watch. And like I said, we got a special one tonight. My name is Troy, and tonight my hair is ridiculous. But let me introduce my other host. First off, we have the Mercury to my Mars.
Mercury. My only attack is bubbles.
Sailor Mercury is my favorite sailor, so
bubbles. Bubble attack. That's great. I'm doing great. I actually discovered something that kind of feel like an idiot having not discovered before, but ROM hacks. It's not ROMs, but ROM hacks, where they actually will do fan versions of games like Final Fantasy for the Super Nintendo, different Final Fantasies.
Versions?
Yeah, fan alterations, dialogue spoofs, all kinds of stuff. So I found a few in Chrono Trigger. But yeah, it's been fun.
Yep, that happened. Let me introduce the other host. He is the Uranus.
Can't wait for this.
Pluto.
Oh!
It's pronounced Uranus.
Not in my house.
Were those the two in the special relationship?
I think that's Neptune and Uranus.
Okay. I knew Uranus was one of them.
Wait, they're just cousins.
Yeah.
I have lost myself in Factorio again. It's just one of those games where you start out with nothing and you have to build everything. But at least this game has a point. Like you're supposed to build a rocket ship and get off the planet, and then that's the end of the game. But it's a game Troy would just absolutely adore.
I'm angry at just listening to about it.
Yeah,
and I would like to talk about something that I did. Actually, it was last night. I stayed up all night watching one anime beginning to end.
Holy. How many episodes?
10.
Oh. I stayed up all last night watching the movie. So.
It was Devilman Crybaby on Netflix.
You finished that.
In
one night?
In one night.
Oh my
god! It starts off like an acid trip and it ends with a sucker punch to your gut. And after having watched the anime we're about to talk about, Madoka Magica, I need a hug.
Yeah, I remember you saying, "Oh, I gotta go watch Godzilla to cleanse my palate because I'm so sad."
Yeah,
and didn't work out, huh?
I'll be honest. No. So I was told Devilman Crybaby, hey, there's a lot of adult things to see in it. Hey, if you're 13 and your parents don't check your anime history, you're welcome. Anyway, let's go to the other despair-ridden anime that I watched. It's Puella Magi Madoka Magika. The director is Akiyuki Shinbo, known for the Monogatari series that Jason loves so much that the rest of us actually been checking out. So he's the director of this, and he brought in for a writer Gen Urabuchi, who did Psycho Pass and Fate Zero.
Okay.
I love this guy's work. So if you can understand what the Monogatari series for art and what the writer is for compelling stories, you kind of get the perfect mix right here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why that director and writer is so important. Let's go to our non-spoiler review and tell people how we feel. Jason, this is your first time watching it. We've literally been telling you to watch this forever. So
I'm so glad you picked it.
Let's hear your non-spoiler review.
It was fantastic. what I've been telling people when I say, yeah, I'm watching Madoka Magica. It's a magical girl anime. And they're like, and so, I give the description of, well, yes, it's a magical girl anime, but it explores the idea of where did their powers come from? How did they get those powers? And at what cost? And every time I say that, I always get this peak of interest, like, ooh, really? And it pays off. It's a fantastic anime. The art is absolutely riveting. In and out of what we'll get into later is called labyrinths. And I find the antagonist ? Absolutely enthralling as well. It's got great humor, and yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Okay, Jeremy, this is all standby for you and me, but let's go ahead and give ours.
Loved it as much, if not more, than I did the first time I saw it. The music is just amazing, and the way that the layers are just peeled back with every episode, especially after you get like the first few episodes, it peels back really fast from there on, and you're just on a roller coaster ride, and I love it. Yeah, it takes you places you never thought you were going in the first episode. It's so good.
I finished this in one day. And I didn't even mean to.
I remember asking you that. Yeah.
I got to episode 3, and it didn't pull any punches, and I was like, that spare moment I had.
That's what I'd say for my review. If you give this the 3-episode rule,
oh yeah,
I don't see how you walk away from it. As far as animes I've had to rewatch because of this podcast, the very few I've done, this is the most fun I've had rewatching something. And it's just such a good deconstruction, not only of magical girl animes, which I have a history of because when I started watching anime, there was Dragon Ball Z and there was Sailor Moon.
Yep.
And there was Robotech, and that's like what there was. So Sailor Moon's a big part of, so Magical Girl, big solid part of my history. But also just of anime powers in general and anime worlds, and just looking at what's on the other side of that coin that we all think is so cool. And I think that is what's so amazing about it. Yeah. And before we get into spoiler section, we have to talk about the opening and the closing. What did you guys think of the song? Now be careful about spoilers because.
I absolutely loved every time that the beginning would come on. There's this set of beats that take place, and you see Madoka walking away. And I don't know what it is, but every single time with every single episode, that always gets me. And you feel the music there. And then once it gets into the singing part, it's just, it's all right. But that initial set of beats is just amazing. So I wound up getting both of these, the beginning and the end outro song, after episode 3 when the outro changes. I've got that one too. That was so good. Yep.
I enjoyed them. I stopped watching them probably about after episode 5. Especially the outro because it's mostly credits. But it's I like them.
The songs, maybe the outro song, the second outro song grabs me more than the other. It's actually been in my head all day today. But the songs don't really grab me. The intro to this anime is for an anime it wishes it was, or the characters wish it was. And there's something so dark about it because of that. Like, this is this is wrong. You're watching this intro and you're like, this isn't right, but I want it to be. And it's almost a little glimmer of hope, but it's still soul crushing at the same time. And as for that ending, what they do with the endings, and we're going to talk about it when we get to the episode, it is so perfect. And I actually ended up watching that second ending over and over again, like looking for visual clues because it's so compelling. The girl running and passing by her friends and into the light or the darkness and what that all meant. I couldn't stop watching it because I just wanted more analysis, I guess, from it. So.
I actually just figured out what it is that I liked so much about the intro. You pointed out something interesting there. I think it's that loss of innocence, and that the intro reminds you every time, remember when they thought it was this? Remember when they thought, yeah, it's a reminder of that innocent, naive view. Yeah, that's great. It's like a little hammer hitting you every single time.
Yep. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and drop our spoiler warning. If somehow you haven't felt the need to watch this anime up to this point, we're going to tell you everything about it. We're actually going to do a little different than normal. We're going to go straight into characters, go through every single character, and then just tear through the plot. At the end, we are going to have a little bit of talk about the sequel movie, but we'll have more about that at the end. So this is your spoiler warning. Spoiler warning. Okay. Like I said, we're just going to go straight into characters because they all almost all but one major character shows up in this first episode. So I just want to go through them. First off, we have Madoka, our main character, pretty pink-haired girl caught in something. What did you guys think of her?
I liked her, and I think I really liked her because of the way the anime portrayed her in the entire series, because the intro shows her in her transformed state. The outro could as well. There were lots of hints that she was going to change into said magic girl. And then once we get later into the series, we get a little more of that. But I really liked watching this back and forth of, is she going to be a magic girl? Is she not? Who is this girl? Because the one that I know is not a magic girl. So, but I liked her shyness, but her stalwartness as well.
Yeah, I thought she was the epitome of sincerity and selflessness, humility. Like she was the character that was supposed to embody all the best qualities, is what I always got from her. And she really, really played well off Kyubey. I think better than anybody else, to kind of emphasize, once you understand who Kyubey is, like on a second watching and you start to watch the dialogue between them, it's in those that I really, really enjoyed observing manipulation. And it was purely because of her intention being so altruistic that you could see how Kyubey was manipulating things to try and reach its objectives. And yeah, so Madoka was really entertaining for that reason. And also because she was sort of a grounding point for a character that was recognizable in the Magic Girl system. Like the others all had these weird quirks that made you wonder what's going on here, but Madoka was the pure one.
She's not my favorite character in the series. I do like her, and I think she has to be likable because literally this entire anime is will she, won't she. There's a whole lot that happens to fill that, but the main story we're being told is Madoka going to take this step? And if she's not likable, that's a long ride. Yeah. And she is. I had some issues when she would whine about not being special. She kept going into this, I'm not really good at anything. I'm like, everyone loves you. You're very popular. Yeah. You have all these friends. How do you think so low of yourself? And I didn't quite get where that was coming from, I guess.
Yeah, because it definitely didn't come from home, because we saw a lot of her home life. Yeah,
she had a very healthy home life. Her mom boosted her up. Her father boosted her up.
I did get the impression that every one of these girls had a complex of some kind, right? Like Mami had this complex where she was pretending to be stronger than she was. Kyoka had a complex about, food and being, again, really stronger, putting on a false sense of bravado. And so it kind of seemed fitting that Madoka's complex was one of beating herself up to emphasize, like, she's beyond humble. It's almost like an emphasizing of a positive quality to where it becomes negative.
Yeah, I can see that. It wasn't too bad. Like, Madoka is very likable. You care a lot about what happens to her through this anime. All right, let's go to our next character, Hamura, the dark-haired beauty who is mysterious as she is wise, and wise as she is mysterious. Who has really, really cool powers.
Yeah.
Jeremy, what did you think of her?
Oh, Hamura is awesome. That's my favorite character out of all this. Purely because when it comes to that emotional stuff I was talking about earlier about observing how they behave and everything, her arc isn't really one that you necessarily see very much. Like, you see her as kind of a finished character for a good portion of the anime. And she goes through a little bit of a bump here and there. But when you get to view her in a certain part of the anime, like one episode, we get some backstory on her, and you start to put together just how big of an arc that she's gone on. It opens up a whole new perspective on what's going on in this world and what maybe is happening because of the deals that they make to be magical girls. And Homura herself is, like you say, she's this enigma that I was really excited the first time I saw how she was doing all her cool magic, because I couldn't figure out, what is she doing? How is she handling this stuff? So crazy. And her personality, seeing this other layer underneath it where, she was very much a tsundere, right? Appears hostile, but once she gets to know you, she's very warm kind of character. And I guess I have a particular fondness for those too. So,
I thought she was a great character as well. Her power was super cool. It was interesting. Like, if you were going to throw her in the hots, she would definitely be a support character, but she was able to find a way to make her support characteristic into one of the most deadly in the entire anime. But also, there's this tonal shift with her backstory that she basically becomes the main character for nearly she ends up sharing the spotlight of main character for the rest of the anime, because we come to find out that the story, yes, it's revolving around Madoka, our main character, but only because Hamura is making it revolve around her. Mm-hmm. So, and also, I believe in the first episode we get her. We get an interesting conflict surrounding another character we'll probably get to soon. But like that, I'm going to kill this thing.
The one of the most interesting things I found about her is the concept that keeps coming up in this anime about a wish for someone else, and did you make it for them, or did you make it so for yourself because of them? And Hammer, when we find out why she's doing what she's doing, and you look at it, she's really not that heroic. She is letting a lot of people fall to the wayside without a care for one specific purpose. She has a fixation. But at the end, when we find out that she's stuck in this, you either win, which is impossible, or you lose forever, and you can never stop moving forward through that in trying at this impossible task. Man, that's got to be rough. Like, just the psychological stress that this girl must be under. And again, we're talking about schoolgirls and having to breach with that. But through most of the anime, especially in the first viewing, when you don't really know what's up with her, it's hard not to be wary, because there's two characters that you kind of back, like, which one is our villain? Which, they're both acting, they're both keeping their secrets close to their vest. And Hamura's, I find, is hard to like on the first viewing. Yeah, at least until her backstory shows up.
I could see that.
Interesting also about her, because she's lived this life over and over and over again. She's much older mentally than she is physically. And I think that plays a big part into her, not only despair, but also her just mental attitude and her confidence level. These are the things I know I can do. These are the things I'm going to attempt. And if not, then we're just going to try it all over again.
Yeah.
Look, we've all seen Groundhog Day. We know what happens to you psychologically after the 100th time of it not mattering.
And it is interesting too, because it leaves it open-ended just how many times she tried this. It may show us, 3 or 4 or 2 or whatever, but we have no way of telling just how many times. It could have been 100.
They gave the impression that it was a lot.
Yeah. And she started out like in the ones that we saw at the beginning, she was trying to save everybody and it wasn't working. And I'm
not
like,
only that, her personality was much sweeter and much softer. And she just became hard.
Yes, she did.
That brings us to Madoka's best friend, Sayaka, who, for me, I have a hard time liking this character, but especially on this viewing, realizing she's almost not supposed to be here. And in some of the time loops, she wasn't a magic girl, and like she's not strong enough to really be involved in what she's gotten involved with. She's just kind of gotten swept up in it. It's hard not to feel bad for this girl. What do you guys think?
I did have a hard time liking her. At the end, I did. But I think the problem is because of her interactions with the people around her, especially this boy she likes. It just, this Zero's backbone when it comes to anything emotionally difficult was tough to watch. And I know that they're just girls and they're immature. But it was frustrating to watch her slave away at this potential outcome that she's hoping for, and then just kind of snuff it away because she doesn't want to hurt feelings.
I think you're not giving her enough credit for why she pushed it away at the end. It wasn't just. It had to do with what happened when her soul gem landed on the truck. It was that realization compounded of like, I'm not a person anymore, and so I can't ever have happiness, and just drowning herself in her misery.
Which I get that, but it was, I don't know, we can get more into it.
I think I mostly agree with what you're saying and where you're coming from. I felt this very same way.
I think the first time I watched it, I had a lot of trouble with Sayaka being a character that, I think I felt exactly the same way you do too. At the risk of parroting here, I do. but on the second watch through, I was really paying attention to the things that with this knowledge now, paying attention to things that I didn't see before, and I saw really good writing with how her character just kind of was bombarded. Like, she made this decision in this. Really, she was trying to be the altruistic one. She has a pride complex, and she's trying so hard to live up to this image of herself that she can't, but she can't let herself not live up to it. She can't admit it. It's pride without humility. And so because of that, she just keeps punching herself with every single thing that comes at her. And watching that decline, this was actually the first thing that upon watching it this time made me think that the contract might actually amplify the negative emotion. It kind of made me think of, at the risk of mentioning Star Wars and bringing it up, but it made me think of the way that the dark side has been presented in the past, where like, you got to be careful, because if you go over that edge, gravity just increases and pulls you towards the dark side, right? And I wondered if there was a similar relationship between, once they have this contract, they have to manage their emotions so much, otherwise they might fall and corrupt their gem, basically. And so watching her teeter and then just plummet, it was, oh man, I had so much pity for her this time, and I could feel every blow. It was really good.
Yeah, but how does the Force pull you down? How does it work?
That's the risk.
Hey, I bit my tongue. I didn't correct him.
So for those of you uninformed, we had a good 6-hour battle on.
Everyone should just be happy we don't do a Star Wars podcast. We do an anime podcast.
They're just yelling back and forth.
That's pretty great.
Okay, on to Mommy, who is one of my favorite of the Magic Girls because she's just so darn adorable. Guys, we don't get a ton of time with her, but what'd you think?
I felt that she was trying to be the adult of the group. Like she was trying to be a role model, but she didn't look at or see herself as that. But she kind of is, I don't know. It just kind of fell flat a little bit for me. I wasn't too invested in her, unfortunately. But I was invested enough that episode 3 hurt.
There was a fantastic way that they matched the musical score to her. She has her own musical score that is just it. Every time it plays, I remember poor Mommy, and I have to say, on my first time watching this series, Mommy was my favorite character, even though I got such a short period of time with her because she was trying so hard to live up to that position of leadership, and yet she even freely admits to herself, I don't have to do this anymore. I'm not alone. I'm not, I don't have to push myself beyond my limits anymore. Like she was this person that you could really have some compassion for, where she's feeling so much relief, and you're like, yes, okay, this is cool. Take me along this road. I want to see what. And so it's like the trauma, like solidifies her in my mind.
I really actually liked her power because
the ribbon and the guns.
Specifically the guns, because it wasn't that she pulled out an automatic weapon and just started firing, but she would summon 20 muskets. And she would have to fire each one individually. I thought that was a really cool play on how am I going to fire like multiple projectiles at my target.
Yep.
This is a character I felt was definitely enhanced on a second viewing because I found her to be the middle ground between Sayaka, who wants to do this magical girl thing right, be the hero, anime hero that she thought she would be when she started, and Kyoko, who has given up on this hero business and is literally just using her strength to survive. And it's now about her. And Mommy's somewhere in the middle where she's kind of come to the realization of what the reality of her new life is, but she still wants to be that hero she signed up to be at the start. And we also learned that, she didn't really have an option when they came to this wish. It was literally this or nothing. And she's this character who's trying to make the best of something that she knows deep down is awful. And then there's these other people who are like, should we join up? Maybe. I don't want to tell you no, but I really don't want to tell you yes, because and she doesn't even know the full truth about it. I think Cube points out at one point that she didn't even realize everything.
And she breaks when she does too in some of the flashbacks.
Oh yeah, that's such a good that actually is one of her best character moments when we have a different timeline of her reacting to the truth and how it breaks her.
Literally.
But Mommy wants to be the anime hero still. Mm-hmm. And there's something nice about that, even though she's been in the mud of this horrible world.
Yep.
I have them listed in different orders, but we're not going to go to Kyubey yet. We're going to do Kyoko first. Kyoko, the redheaded. Well, I mean, she's not as quite the hero as the other characters are.
And also, I did not like her character till probably around episode 10.
Really?
Yeah, she rubbed me the wrong way coming on the screen. She didn't seem to have a lot of motivations for what she was saying when she first came on scene. Because it felt like some sort of territorial, dispute instead of, hey, we're trying to save the populace. Which kind of leads into her character arc. But as soon as I saw her backstory, I really appreciated the character.
I thought
she was a great, great addition to the quintuplet.
Yeah, I felt the same exact way when I saw her backstory. She's probably the lowest for me as far as the magical girl characters go. as far as interesting. But I think it's just because, like you say, she's there to present a survival side. I think you analyzed it really well, Troy, with the comparison to Mimi or Mommy. But I don't know. Nothing really stood out really great to me. I liked the little cliche how she was always eating something.
Yeah.
That was cute. And her personality was interesting. It just felt kind of empty. The relationship between her and Sayaka and how she dealt with the situation when Sayaka became a witch was very interesting, and how that played into Kyubei's hand was very, very interesting. But her as a character didn't connect to, even on the second viewing, as much as I would have liked to compared to the others.
I actually thought for sure her wish, I thought this the second viewing because I had forgotten, her wish was going to be I'd never want to be hungry again. And that's why she always had food on her, because her wish just kept her constantly fed. But that was not it. There was a little bit of that played into why she had food, because she had been starving at one point. I like the element, and Jason touched on it, the element she brings of the territorialness. Each part of the story, we peel back another layer on this magic girl life and see the rotten core beneath. And when she shows up, it's that, they had mentioned, we compete for killing these witches because we take the energy, and we just see how ugly that gets. We crank it up to 11 when she shows up, and it's to show off. Yeah, when two magical girls are in the same area, it can come to killing blows, and she's ready to kill to take this territory, and without remorse. And I love her arc of how, while Sayaka's refusal to abandon heroism affects her, while it tears Sayaka apart, for Kyoko, it actually reminds her why she started this in the first place. That she did want to be a hero, and actually that brings her character arc full circle when things go bad, and she just has that big heroic moment. I thought they did a good job with her. She's not my favorite character, but I think she had a good arc. It made a lot of sense. She was kind of neat and just fit.
I did forget about the part where she was fighting with Sayaka. That was really cool.
And now for the one that's going to take the most time, the one who on the second viewing I couldn't take my eyes off. He steals every scene he's in. Yep. Kyubei. Man, we all want to say so much about this. So who wants to go first?
I have an idea. Why don't we wait to get deep into theory territory till we're closer to the end of the episode recaps?
Do Kyubei at the end.
But what I would like to say about him is, at the beginning, he was really, really pushy about, but he was always careful to be like, but it's your choice. But he was really, really pushy about getting these girls to form a contract with him to become magical girls. Super, super, but he was car salesman level, used car salesman level of, hey, you should make a contract with me, but it's your decision. And God, those red eyes are so creepy, but he was a fantastic addition to this anime, because, as we'll get into later, we're not at a consensus of whether he's good guy, bad guy, antagonist, or what he is to the story. But he's definitely a plot device that was necessary to make this very interesting.
How about you, Jeremy?
No, I love him. He's the detached scientist, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. If everything here is a petri dish or a labyrinth, something of that sort, he's above it, watching every bit. It's great.
Well, I'll save most of what I want to say related, like Jason. Every magic girl anime tends to have that cat or that cute creature, and I love the twist of Kyubei. You see Kyubei and you're like, oh, there's the magic girl cat. There had to be one. And then you're like, oh.
Oh crap.
Oh my God.
And that's beautiful. The idea of what Kyubei represents, and then how it deconstructs magic girl animes. So good. All right, let's do the actual story. We start off with a flash forward of Huh?
Yeah, at least it seemed like a dream. She thought it was a dream, so
Yeah,
like
it
we're
ended up
initially
being a
presented
dream.
that way.
Madoka, we see Madoka and a giant monster's in the sky, and a girl is fighting it, and Kyubey is there, and she's like, "Hey, you could save the day if you become a magic girl." And then she wakes up, and we're in her normal life. I kind of want to talk about the normal world and how it's presented art-wise, because it's almost drawn very simply and bland, especially compared to the Labyrinth. Even though there's still some weirdness to it, like in the hospital room where the violin boy is in, like there's 5 random different types of chairs just scattered about his room. There's just some weird things with the art style that do that, but almost everything is bright and empty in this world. There's windows to everything. Even the classrooms are all glass. That's so weird. What'd you guys think?
Yeah, like the desks in the classrooms retract into the ground when the person
so this
is
is
not
the future,
present.
Right?
It's got to be the future.
Like, how bad action is that, though? That, like, when you leave, your desk folds up and just disappears into the floor.
And then says absent on it.
Yes.
Letters.
That's awesome.
This kind of goes back to the art style and the phenomenal job the artists did with this. I felt this, like, home life was cutesy to an extent. It actually was pretty endearing that mom was more unstable than everyone else in the family. In that first scene. But walking to school, going between lunch, the school itself, walking home, the windows and open space everywhere. This anime gave such a weird detachment feeling, because like you're getting involved with these cutesy girls that are, they're having the time of their life, they're going to become heroes, but then like the atmosphere and the backgrounds was just so big and ominous, and it felt, every scene just gave this feeling of, this is too big for you, whatever you're doing. Are you going to lunch? This is too big for you.
That's an interesting observation. I did not catch that. For me, the scenes of especially like her daily life and the routine that she went in really stood out to me as get comfortable. This is a routine. Everybody's doing what they expect to be doing. Relax. Look, they're just walking to school, having a conversation. Don't expect anything unusual.
Like it's overly bland almost, right?
Yeah, like it almost seemed like a slice of life portion until you started getting the magical girl stuff introduced. I didn't even notice the ever present wide spaces, but now that I'm looking back, I see what you're talking about, and I think you're right, but I didn't see it then.
It felt so ominous watching it. Like,
I wonder,
like, this is bad.
Did it have anything to do, do you think, maybe with anything we said? Like,
no, well, I knew the premise, so that probably played a bit into it. Yeah. Watch the first like 10 minutes after the beginning credits of the first episode, and listen. Watch just the backgrounds and listen. Okay. There's not a ton of music playing, and when it is, it's fairly soft. During dialogue, there's just very little background noise, but the landscapes and the background textures are just big and ominous. But like, that's the best word I could use for it. It felt very ominous, and this was a thing that happened through most of the anime until it started getting more into the battle parts.
Speaking of ominous, one scene I noticed is so they get to school, and a new girl is introduced to the class. It's Hamura, and she's very popular instantly, but she says, "Hey, I need to go to the nurse's office," and Madoka is the nurse's assistant or for the classroom. It's her job to take people to the nurse's office. Apparently that's a thing.
In the future, in Japan.
And the two of them start walking down the halls, and like I said, all the classrooms are glass walls. Every single person is staring at them as they walk by. Every student over their shoulder in the middle of a conversation, but every eye is on. And I don't know if it's Hamura or Madoka or just the fact that like destiny is emanating off of them. It just gives me the sense of like, why? why does everyone care about these two characters walking down a school hallway? It's so odd.
And I love how timid Madoka is. And she's just like, I don't mean to be nosy, but how do you know your way to the nurse's office? Why would you need me if you know?
Yep. In that scene, I remember that when Homura first showed up in the class, everybody was just cooing over how beautiful she was and everything. And I always wrote it off as that, which seems kind of like a mundane reason, but that's interesting. Yet another interesting detail in the background that just sets the tone for the whole thing.
When they get halfway there, like in this hallway, Hamura confronts her and is like, "Hey, by the way, would you would you sacrifice everything to save someone?" And Madoka's like, "Wait, what?" She's like, "Just promise me you're never gonna change." Wait, what?
Who are you again?
Yep. She says a lot of stuff, but that's basically the gist I got from it. It's just a very weird confrontation, and it puts Madoka very much like you said. She's very timid and now she's very uneasy around this character. This character scares her because this character seems to be fixated on her without good explanation,
right?
Without ever having even met her before,
right?
Yeah.
And then later, Madoka and Sayaka are at the mall. They're shopping for music. They're having fun. And they hear a voice, or Madoka hears a voice calling for help in her mind. And she goes, and Hamura is chasing this white cat thing that's not a cat. It's Kyubey. And she's attacking it. It's injured. It's bleeding. And Madoka saves it in Sayaka, and they get away. But they fall into some kind of bizarre world. And a magic girl shows up to save them. This will end up being Mommy, and she does the coolest, like you said, pulling out muskets by the dozens and like firing them and throwing them. The elegance and dance of firing muskets. I don't know how someone's imagination thinks of that. They're like falling out of her hat. She's grabbing them at the last minute. There's ribbons flying everywhere. It's so.
She like does a curtsy and they fall out from underneath her skirt all around her.
Her fighting style is probably the best of all the other girls. I think maybe Hamura's has a grounded realism to it that's also great, but Mommy's is on the other end of the spectrum, right? That it's just all fantastical and fancy, but it's still guns and giant cannons.
Like giant, like starship size,
hugging the handle of a pistol and pulling the trigger. And when they get back, Hamura leaves, and the cat talks to them and says, "Hey, I want to make contracts with you," because he has the power to create young girls into magic girls. And he's like, "Hey, you guys look like great candidates to me." And then the next episode starts with him sleeping in Madoka's room, like he's there watching her.
And nobody else can see him. Only the girls that he wants to sell his contracts to.
Yep. And he sells them for one wish.
Yep.
So he's not a genie, because genies do 3.
That's right.
Yeah, so we get a flashback to the night before where they talk with Mommy, and she explains to them kind of basically the basics. We learn about soul gems, which is, what a magic girl gets her power from. We learn about they fight witches, which is what creates the bizarre world, and they're evil, and they create curses, and that magical girl's job is to hunt these witches.
And if you don't hunt the witches, then the witches will actually be influencing the real world at the location that they're in their labyrinth, with these curses, and people will probably commit suicide or die in some other
horrible things.
Mm-hmm.
So, but as the magical girl fights, her magical energy is expended, and in order to get replenish that magical energy, when they kill a witch, it reduces into what's called a grief seed, and they can use that to restore their magic.
Right. In this episode, they accompany Mommy on another witch hunt. They actually stop a person from committing suicide. Mm-hmm. And at the end, we learn about the grief seed and how you can touch it to your soul gem. And it takes it replenishes your magic by sucking out the darkness from your soul gem.
It actually was mentioned as two separate things at that point in time, even. But yeah, it does both of them. The magic was actually talked about as if it was a bonus. Like the real purpose of the grief seed was to cleanse the darkness from your soul gem so that it's still shone as brightly as the first day you had it. And and that's not foreboding at all. And then to give you back your mana too.
There is a scene in the middle of this episode where Madoka and Sayaka can't think of wishes because they're pretty much on board at this point. They're like, yeah, we're totally going to do this. But if you get only one wish, what should it be? And they're like, we don't really want anything. We kind of have perfect lives. And even it's important more with Sayaka because she has a friend, a guy that she's actually likes, in the hospital, and his life has been ruined because he's a violin player and his arm has been damaged. And so she's thinking like, man, why am I getting a wish? Because I'm fine.
Because there's no such thing as magical boys.
True story.
Because we don't have emotions.
That's right.
And I'd make a great magical boy.
You would.
My wife says I get one feeling. That's it.
You get one feeling. Did you trade a wish for it?
So when she insults me, she asks, "Oh, did I hurt your feeling?"
That's right. It's behind an impenetrable barrier of callousness.
That's right.
There is an interesting exchange in the next episode because we see Sayaka with that boy in the hospital, and she asks the question, "Can you use your wish for another person?" And they advise her against it. They're like, "Yeah, that's kind. You can, but you kind of shouldn't because it's hard to tell the difference between wishing for someone else and having them have a good thing, or wishing for someone so they'll be grateful for you and it's still for you, and that can just turn ugly." There's a really interesting thing after they tell her this. I noticed the second viewing, they mentioned this and she kind of passed it off like, yeah, I would never do that. They go and visit the boy in the hospital again, and they're not allowed to see him. He's in physical therapy or surgery or something. And she leaves and she's upset. She's like, how rude is he that they couldn't see it? And it just kind of gives a glimpse into her mind that maybe it's not as selfless as she's saying. Mm-hmm. I found that really interesting because it came right after that whole, yeah, maybe you shouldn't wish for someone else. And she's like, no, it totally would be for them. And then seconds later, she's upset with him for having doctor visits and wasting her time.
Also, it gave us a really interesting sense of careful wishing for someone else, because it kind of, I do love how this anime kind of touches on the whole idea of, genie in a bottle and wishing for it, but the genie's not a great person. So yeah, he'll give you what you want, but terrible things happen to you at the same time. And so they kind of advise her, like, not only will it may not go the way you want, but it could end up just worse. So let's do it for you. So if it goes bad, it's on you.
Right.
It doesn't involve other people.
Yeah, because at this point they're being told, like, yeah, hunting witches is dangerous. I mean, this isn't for nothing. You're not getting a wish and superpowers to be really cool. Like, you have to spend your life now hunting. So, come up with a good wish. While they're coming back from the hospital, they actually see a grief seed, which is a witch about to hatch. And Madoka goes to get mommy, and Sayaka and Kyubei stay behind to watch it, and they end up getting sucked into the labyrinth. When Madoka and mommy come back to fight the witch, Madoka tells her, I'm totes going to do this, and all I want for my wish is to be a magic girl. So I don't know what I'll make a wish, but I'm going to make something. And mommy's like, oh, wish for cake. At least you get cake.
The cake is a lie. The cake is a lie.
Actually, it's interesting because the grief seed is spawned at a hospital, and they mentioned that witches tend to go to places where people committed suicide, or where there's mass depression, or they said one of the worst places they can find a witch is at a hospital. Because of all the sickness and despair that's there. So that makes this particular witch that much more dangerous.
Do you guys have any idea how that grief seed got there?
Nope.
My understanding is that grief seeds do travel, that witches travel. They do not stick to one spot forever. For the very thought that otherwise every witch we run into this in anime would be a magic girl from this town, and this town would have a way higher death rate of young girls.
So you think that they travel as grief seeds, like they shrink into a grief seed, travel, and then reemerge? And that's all you're
I
seeing?
don't know if that's true, but I imagine a grief seed can travel and a witch can travel. That it's kind of metaphysical, just floating through quantum space until catching.
My theory on it was because, why didn't mommy just grab it and use it if it was a grief seed? Like, hey, get some more magic. But I think it was more of a visual representation to people that can see the labyrinths of like a casting of a portal. And it's interesting that you mentioned, Troy, because I was about to mention the same thing. The witches travel, and I think this is how they travel. They pick a spot that they're going to teleport to or dimensional portal to, and a grief seed shows up to basically pinpoint where they're going to spawn at.
Yeah, because we know how a witch is born, obviously, if you've seen this, and we also, if you've seen the movie, know who this witch was, and this witch was not in that spot. So I actually kind of buy into Jeremy's theory that this witch had already hatched, but this was her traveling. Because, yeah, they actually have to track these witches down. Even when they find them in one area, they're like, we have to stay here. It won't be here when we come back.
Which there's something really interesting, too, about their familiars. Like, it's mentioned later on when they encounter familiar, catch it before it turns into a witch. And so that was another possibility that occurred to me, was maybe a familiar had actually made it to here and was capable of transforming because it had fed on enough hospital grief.
That's actually probably true.
I like that. Maybe a familiar, like it cocooned. They call the spot.
That occurred to me while you guys were talking. That's the only other option I could think of.
The other thing is Hamura shows up too and tries to warn Mommy about this witch. Mommy's like, hey, and they've talked a couple times through this anime, and if not, their relationship is not going well. Let's just put it that way. They're very hostile towards each other. So Mommy ties her up and is like, no, you stay here. I'm not listening to you anymore. I told you I'm not dealing with your BS, and goes on. So when she gets to this witch, Madoka told her she's going to join her and they're going to be partners, and she's so elated to not be alone, and she just rocks this battle, just tears the witch apart. Except for the witch has a trick up its sleeve that it can take a second form. And the second form,
final form,
is like a giant sock puppet with
Jack
teeth.
in the Box.
Yeah. And all we see is it come down and bite, and then she's dangling by her neck from the air, and she's dead.
And then you see a shadow of her body falling without a head. And then to make it even worse, the Jack in the Box sock-headed monster creature leaps down to where the body fell and nom 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 nom
consumes the rest of it.
Yes.
Now, do you guys? Now we learn you can't die from physical harm. So do you guys know why she died?
I think that the soul gem was consumed and shattered.
It's on her hat.
On her head. Yeah.
Oh, it's on her hat.
Yep.
That sucks.
a moment of silence for Bobby.
Hamura shows up and kills the witch, and everyone's really, really upset, obviously.
Which, by the way, was a great display of her power without giving it away. Because it looked like she was teleporting from platform to platform.
And even the witch was getting pissed off.
Yeah.
It was great.
He'd bite her, and wait, I swear I got you.
Yeah. It was all expression, so good.
It was animated as if it got her as well.
Yep. Now, when we talked about ending themes, this is the moment we were talking about. The first two episodes ends with the girls hugging and this nice quiet music, and I can't remember what the tune is. It was so generic and not my thing.
Yeah.
This episode ends, and this dark, foreboding tone just permeates everything, and it is a literal slap in the face of, what did you think you were watching? This isn't Sailor Moon.
That's right.
It's so beautiful how it comes in. Yep. That ending theme is so cool with Madoka running and past all the characters. like I said, if you got to this point, and I can see how people would struggle with the first 2 episodes. It's kind of light. It's pretending to be something it's not. You get to this moment and you're like, oh no, what are we doing?
Yeah, this is when I texted you guys. I was like, this is pull punches, doesn't it?
Yep.
So this is literally my favorite moment in the entire anime, just because it's so, like I said, it's a slap in the face.
Very jarring.
Yeah. In a good way, though. In a good way. We get more hospital visit scenes. Everyone's mourning mommy. And Madoka and Sayaka they're like, we're out. Yeah, we can't. Yeah. And they feel bad about it because mommy gave her life to protect the world, and they're thinking like, we're abandoning the world to despair, but we don't want to die. And there's something really interesting. Kyubei's like, all right, peace out. I'm going. He's not upset. He's not angry. He's just sure.
Moving on.
If that's what's gonna happen. Hamura talks to Madoka about it. She explains that this is the fate of magic girls. Her body will never be found because it's in the labyrinth. Officially, she'll be a missing person forever. Then things go bad when Madoka's other friend that she has Sayaka, and she has a friend called Hitomi who doesn't really get involved in the plot very much. She has a little bit of a side arc that's
impactful, but
it plays in, but it is what it is. Sees her with the witch's kiss, which is you've been cursed by one of the witches. Madoka goes to her and is trying to check on her. She's like, hey, come with me. And she takes her to like this suicide cult room where all these people are going to immolate themselves.
Yep. I thought it was a really interesting moment because the fact that Madoka could still see the witch's mark meant Kyubei hadn't given up. Because the telepathy up to this point and the fact that they could see Kyubei and see witches' marks and do these things, that was all because Kyubei wanted them as magical girls. I think the moment he turned his attention away from them truly is when they would no longer see those things. And since they still saw them, I think he was still manipulating things. Like, I wondered, why Hitomi? Why now? Kyubei, you jerk. I know you had something to do with this.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see somehow him making sure Hitome got this witch's mark. Also, at the same time, Sayaka is visiting that boy in the hospital, and he's kind of falling into a depression and totally takes it out on her. And this has a major effect on her. So Madoka ends up with these people committing suicide. She saves their lives, literally throws the thing that they're going to pour like chemicals into a bucket to poison themselves with gas. She gets rid of the bucket and they start trying to attack her, and she locks herself in, and she falls in to the witch's labyrinth. And Sayaka shows up as a magic girl and saves her.
Right as she's going to be drawn and quartered in some kind of weird like gel world. It's so creepy.
And her wish is that this boy in the hospital, that he would be healed and his arm is now all better. And so Sayaka can now do magic girl stuff.
And she's a pretty cool magic girl, I thought. Like, she's got these swords that she could swing around. She's got a cape.
I love that.
She looks cool.
They talk a couple times about range and melee. I love that she can make like 10 swords and just throws them for her range attack.
Yep.
We do find out a little later that your special ability will be based off of whatever wish you do. Right. So her body heals much faster because she asked for a healing wish.
Which is a really nice touch.
Right.
Very cool. Yeah. Should we talk a little bit about what the Labyrinth art style is? Because I don't think we've mentioned how different it is.
We definitely should, because it's almost its own character. This for sure. So what are your guys' thoughts on these Labyrinth things? It reminds me of Monty Python side art things.
I can see that.
Go ahead, Jeremy. What do you think?
Oh, it just takes me back to the episodes where we talked about unconventional art. I think we did it in a minisode. And this was the one I talked about because that sense of disconnect, how this is not the real world. Everything about it is so crazy. It reminds me of Sheogorath, right?
From Sheogorath,
yeah. It's the insanity, and yet they do such a good job. Like, I was really trying to pay attention to the details of each labyrinth this time through and pick out where I could find a theme or similarity within an individual labyrinth. And it was really cool because you could kind of get a sense of what drove this girl over the edge. Damn, I sprung it. What created this witch? What emotions created this witch, and how, and also perhaps what that individual's experiences had been before. Maybe draw a little bit more information from them, and yet it's done in such a way that you're creeped out the entire time. It's just so good.
I think that's the thing that I came away with the most is no matter how beautiful it was, no matter how cool looking it was, it's always unsettling. There's just something about the contrast of the art style that it's almost on the verge of making you queasy. Like, you just feel wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The best way I was able to kind of put it into words was if the South Park guys asked Tim Burton do a Halloween episode. And it's just this paper art style that, like Troy said, was very unsettling, but intriguing at the same time. And it's interesting because it's such a detachment from reality. Even though it's unsettling, you end up getting a little complacent with how dangerous this place really is for these girls. And it's like even the little monsters that pop up through it. And really all the labyrinth is some sort of shield or protection for the witch, which is a which is a manifestation representative of their current psyche, which is obviously insanity based on the emotion that Jeremy was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
This is in the story where Kyoko shows up actually at the end of this episode, and she's a magical girl from the town over. She knew Mommy. I think one of my kids said Mommy trained her, but I have no way of knowing if that's true.
There may be some kind of manga or something that connects them, but nothing in the anime talks about
that. There are also two movies that retell this whole story that maybe that's in there, and I haven't watched those. And it's not one of the movies because I'm not watching the same story twice. That's just weird.
Except for this whole series.
Right. Okay, you're right. I'm an idiot. I'm sorry. But because she knows Mommy has died, so she's there to take over the territory. Cube tells her, "Hey, there's a girl already doing it." She's like, "Yeah, but she's a newbie. She can't handle this." And she's like, "All right, yeah, do what you want to do." But just so you know, there's also another girl, and I have no idea what's going on with her. It's so weird.
And Kyoko's like, "Didn't you make the contract?" I don't know. I don't
Probably?
think so.
Yeah. And so that's something that actually comes up. Cube doesn't know what Hamura is. She is a puzzle to even him. And he's the one who's like, I know everything. I'm psychically linked to all this stuff, and I've been doing this forever. And Hamura is a mystery to him. And because of the way he is, it's not like he's unsettled by it. And he's not curious about it. He's just, I just don't know what she is. So that's just how it is.
So apparently, when Kyoko first turned to Magical Girl while her family was still with her.
Cool beans.
That she was Mommy's apprentice. And it was shown in a spinoff called The Different Story. Until, what happens to her family happens. And so then she decides that they shouldn't go after familiars and that kind of,
so that's when she breaks away from the hero. I'm not here to be a hero. I'm here to.
Well, yeah. She's like, I don't want to go after familiars anymore. I just want to go after witches because that's where the reward is. And Mommy's more of the, we need to go after all the bad guys. So that's what's
interesting. it's one thing. Madoka Magica as a series is huge, especially like in Japan. It's huge, and so there has been a lot of spin-off games, merchandise. Like
I was looking for games because this is a great premise to bring some games in. And there was an MMO that got discontinued, which was kind of funny. There's also like some kind of a fighting game or something that I heard is pretty good, except for the AI. The ally AI sucks.
Oh.
Yeah. But might be worth looking into if you have access to it.
Okay, so the different story is a manga.
That makes sense.
That'll do it. So we get scenes of Sayaka making her contract, which shows Kyubey literally reaching into her body and pulling her soul gem out. We get her visiting the hospital and getting to see the boy healed, and he plays the violin. So she gets to see the outcome of her wish. And then her and Madoka go witch hunting that night, and they run into a familiar that she's fighting. But then Kyoko shows up and pretty much picks a fight, and these two start throwing down into
hard.
It starts off like, hey, I'm just going to show you I'm better, and it becomes a lethal battle where they're trying to kill each other. And Sayaka gets hit really bad, but heals almost instantly. She's basically Wolverine. Like Jason said, because of her wish. And this fighting continues until Hamura shows up and actually forces them to stop. But she's not stopping the fight for them. She's stopping because Kyubey is standing there with Madoka like, you could stop the fight.
Right.
I'm a magic girl.
Yeah.
Actually, this scene, upon first viewing and not knowing Hamura's power, did not make sense.
Like how did
I loved it. I loved it that it didn't make sense at the time, and then I even loved it even more after the reveal, because it was like, wait, her spear's literally in her face, and now she's like, what? How is her power to teleport? Is it to teleport other people? Like, what is going on? But yeah, it was a really cool scene and another display of her power without giving it away, which I thought was a great technique by the writers.
I remember when I first watched it, I thought, is this Dragon Ball Z? Like, is she Goku? Like, what's going on?
It's the transmission.
That's right. Yep.
The next episode after the fight is ended, Sayaka kind of... Oh, Hamura knocks her out. Like, literally...
Oh, yeah.
Bonks. Like, you're done. We get to see Kyubey eat a grief seed. Like, his back opens up and the grief seed is thrown into
never
him.
Explored again, and it frustrated the piss out of me.
Are you sure?
Really?
I feel like it is.
Yeah, I thought it was explained pretty well.
That he eats discarded grief seeds.
So, I mean, when we learn more about him and about what his purpose is, those grief seeds have the potential to reabsorb enough negative energy to basically rehatch the witch. So I would think of it as like a sterile chamber. If we go back to the scientist analogy.
That's why his full name is what it is. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that name was more for him turning girls into magical girls so that they will become, but I didn't realize he rehatched witches.
I don't think he... Oh my god, I never thought that. I thought he just discarded the grief seed, like he consumed it and eliminated it. But you might be right. Because if you think about it, this was one thing that was bugging me about the ecology of it is the number of witches should... it's proportionate. Yeah, it should be decreasing. I mean, I guess the familiars could be continuing to increase it so that if they're not...
Where did the familiars come from?
I'm guessing they spawned
because
from
all the transformations we've seen, there's no middle state. It's like sad, unstable witch. There's no like I become this form that wanders. I wonder if Kyubey spawns familiars.
Oh, I like that. I thought familiars came from witches, but if they come from Kyubey, that's even better.
I think because I think Mommy said that familiars come from witches, but we never see that.
Yeah.
we don't see. I guess I assumed it was from their victims. Like they could turn their victims into familiars.
I thought of it as kind of the way that plants bud, right? Like the witch gets enough grief, she just sprouts off a familiar. So I guess there's lots of ways that it could be, but I like the flavor of the Cube one. But I always thought that it was simply like a sterilization chamber. Like I'm eliminating these so that they can't cause a problem anymore. And I thought he was being sincere. But he's not exactly the most truthful guy. So
okay. So I have my own theory on it.
Okay.
That's literally him harvesting the energy he's there to harvest.
That's not how he said it works. He said it works because of entropy that you're releasing it into the universe.
Yeah, I thought that it happened like because it's supposed to be during that transition phase that we'll learn about later, where a witch is made. As if we haven't like broached
that's
the
energy
spoiler.
he wants. I thought that energy got stored in the grief seed.
No,
he said specifically it's the energy switch between hope and despair.
That's why this scene bugged me so much because I wasn't sure why he was eating them, and he gave the answer of, "Oh, I'm just getting rid of it." The thing is that throughout the anime, Cube has never outright lied. He is always only withheld information,
right?
And that explanation was way too short for.
Yeah,
I've taken this terribly dangerous thing that I'm now harvesting for myself, the girl is now harvesting, and I'm just going to put it here. Don't worry about it.
So does this
what? Why?
Does this maybe create a possibility of Cube planting that grief seed at the hospital?
You make a valid point.
I'm wondering.
The grief seed at the hospital was a magic girl, and we know who it is.
Right, but did she teleport there, or did Cube plant her there?
That's possible, but I don't think he spawned it himself.
No, but
to take a finished, like somebody beat her already, dumped the grief seed, he's got it, he takes it over and plants it, maybe?
That's what I'm wondering.
Witches back.
Yeah, that was the point that Jeremy just made. Is that okay? The amount of witches that one magical girl kills is disproportionate to the amount of
witches
transformations.
Right. The only thing that could make up is the familiars, but we don't know their origin.
And if familiars come from
Cube
to keep the cycle going.
How do you see that? Okay, so at the end of the series, things change. Cube still eats something.
How do you know
that playing into?
Well, we're talking about the movie at that point, right?
No, actually the end of this anime, they show him.
You're talking about the race,
dark cubes, yeah,
dark
cubes.
I think at that point because but hang on, there are no.
Well, it would be but it would be a different system.
Yeah, it's a completely different system because he was like, when he does find out, oh, that's what used to happen. That's a totally different system. That's really interesting. I wonder. Let's do some calculations. So I think that we're looking at a completely different mechanical apparatus.
It seemed really similar because at that ending, she purifies her soul gem, takes what that created, and throws it into him, and he still eats it. It's a very similar process. Right. Is all I'm saying.
It does look similar, and maybe
that's where wraiths come from. Because now that it's a completely different system, we have besides wraiths come from despair. Well,
yeah.
Where do they really come from?
Although then we have the origin point, which is the same issue for me in regards to the main story here is how did we get the first witch, you know?
What came first, the witch or the girl? Well, I think when my kids asked that question, I was like, oh.
Well,
who knows?
So in the new system, I don't have a really good foundation for where the first wraiths would come from, unless Cube is just making them. But in the current anime, it's explained fairly well where the first witches came from.
No, not which is the first one. Like, what was the first magical girl created to fight?
Obviously, way back in time.
No, not when. Like, if there wasn't a witch yet, because no one had transformed to become one.
Magic Girl's purpose?
Who did she fight?
Become a magic girl.
Well, it was probably more of a different sales pitch.
Yeah, he probably just tricked her.
Yeah. Or brought a witch. I guess we're
Well, think about it, because because he said that all the magical girls in the past were people of influence. So most likely their wishes were not, their understanding wasn't to become a magical girl to fight something, but it was a means to create change of some kind.
Yeah, it's possible.
But then once they died, then now we have a problem we need to solve.
Yeah. It's certainly interesting.
In this episode, Kyoko catches Sayaka trying to visit the violin guy at his house, and she's like, "Hey, let's do this. Let's have this fight that we've been wanting to have." And they go to a highway overpass to have a alone. I don't know how that's going to end up being completely alone. There's cars passing by, whatever. That's where they decide to have their death battle.
Like, looking at the amount of damage they do to their environment, that's the worst place they could do.
Everyone's going to see that. Like, before the fight starts, though, everyone shows up. Amuro shows up. Kyubey shows up. Madoka shows up. Madoka.
Actually,
what's that?
Oh, Madoka had a really interesting conversation with her mom before this.
Yeah, I was going to skip it, but if you think it's important, you can definitely bring it up.
Oh, well, it definitely plays into the scene because it seems completely out of character for her to do something like this. But she's like, "Hey, Mom, I don't know what to do. I'm trying to do the right thing, but my friend doesn't want to accept my help." And her crazy drunk mom will do something wrong. She's like, "What?" She's like, "Well, sometimes do the right thing for someone, you just got to do something wrong, something they won't expect."
If they won't make a mistake, you got to make it for them.
You're the worst role model ever.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess I can see how, and I definitely see how you tie that into what's about to happen.
Oh yeah.
I guess I kind of glazed over on that scene, though. I mean, I wrote it's in my notes. I know what happened. Yeah, there's a reason I was skipping it. So that's a nice analysis. I like that.
Yeah.
So she does make a mistake here. To stop Sayaka from transforming into her magical form to start the fight, she grabs her soul gem and she chucks it. And it lands on the back of a truck. The boss is Palmer like, "Oh my god, no!" And goes after it, like, without thinking, like, "I get that." And Sayaka just collapses dead on the ground. Like, not just catatonic, she is dead.
Yeah, not unconscious, not like, in a stasis. No, dead.
She is not breathing. She's got no heartbeat. She's dead.
And her eyes are that classic anime-like glaze.
Kyubey.
And Madoka is just freaking.
Kyubey has a classic moment here of like, "Oh, Madoka, that was dumb." She's like, "Why? You just threw your friend." "What do you mean? She's right here." "No, this is just a body. The soul gems are what they actually are. They're just allowed to remote control these bodies because bodies are weak. Why would you want to be in your body?" Kyoko has never heard this, so she's freaking out. Like, "Wait, what?" And they're basically undead, remote controlling from these rocks that they carry around in their pockets. And they're only allowed to go like 100 meters away from their body or they lose control of it.
Yep. It's amazing.
The absolute tonal shift and attitude change towards Kyubey from this point forward is brilliant. Like, they all look at him like, "Yeah, you didn't outright lie to us. You didn't tell us the truth either, you son of a."
His line is perfect. "Every time you guys find out about this, you always freak out."
They're like, "Why did you tell us?" He's like, "You didn't ask."
Yeah. I mean, I can understand the logic of his point. Like, hey, you're battling deadly monsters. I'm trying to protect you. This is just way easier, don't you think? But their realization that they are dead, that they are just dead bodies, that they are animating remotely, does not sit well. And it's good.
Which makes me wonder, does that mean if like, let's say one of the body they were using got mutilated, but their soul gem survived, could they then find another corpse and just take control of it?
I don't know if there's any intrinsic link to that body. It would seem like it, but I don't know. Oh, okay. I do have a theory. Based on how Kyubey describes what the soul is, he describes it as a particular set of neurons from a particular portion of the brain that he's basically just captured the signature from and put inside the gem, which would mean that it's got to lock in like a key to the brain that it's from. I would imagine. Because I don't imagine that the neurons from a different person would match necessarily.
Yeah, because he did say, what? All you have to do is heal your body with magic, and then you're fine.
So I think that if their body was torn to shreds enough, I think that they could probably still recover as long as the soul gem wasn't damaged.
I just thought that'd be funny. Like, oh, I'm tired of this body. I want a new one.
I want an adult one. It's been 100 years.
Hamra is able to return the gem. And one of my favorite things about this scene is that it's just the next layer to the rotten core that is the Magic Girl contract peeled away. It almost happens like every 3 episodes. We get to that next. Oh, you thought it was bad? It's way, way worse than you thought.
Well, what's also interesting is Hamada never mentioned it this entire time. But she obviously she knew about it because
her reaction.
But she instantly goes taking off after it.
She did know. I think Hamra has tried.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work well when you tell them.
Oh, that's right. She was there. Okay, that's right. That's why she didn't tell them.
Yeah, there's a couple secrets she keeps, and I imagine because we've seen them react poorly to these different secrets in different
timelines, scenarios. Yeah.
So Sayaka comes back to life once her soul gem is returned. She goes home with Kyubey angry and complaining, and he says, "Remember when you got stabbed in the spear? This is what that would actually feel like." And she suddenly doubles over in pain as she's forced to feel fully being stabbed by a spear in the gut. And he's just like, "See, isn't this bad? Don't you not want this?"
and like, what kind of fighting can you do right now? You can't fight right now, can you? You can barely deal with the pain. It was so brutally honest. I was like, I understand. And I actually, in a way, I approve of the disconnect. Like, if you're creating a soldier, it makes sense. Like,
absolutely.
Pain neurons. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or the pain sensory system. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he's like, with enough practice, you can block out all the pain.
Yeah, that becomes important.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good.
But he advises against it. He says you can block out all the pain, but it does slow reaction time, so I wouldn't suggest it. Mm-hmm. Kyoko comes back to Sayaka and asks to have a conversation, and they go to where Kyoko's from, takes them to an abandoned church, and we learn her backstory, which is her wish was that people would listen to her preacher father who had radical ideas about religion, but they made sense to her, and people treated him badly. Even if they didn't believe it, they overreacted to the way what he was saying. So she wished that people would listen to him. And she was like, "I'll be a magic girl by night and save the world. My father will save people through religion during the day." And her father finds out about the wish and commits murder-suicide on the whole family, leaving her behind. Mm-hmm. Like, just snaps like crazy. So yeah, that hurt. And that's when she decided, I'm not going to be that kind of magic girl anymore. And she's trying to get Sayaka on her side. And Sayaka's like, "No, I did this to be a hero. I'm going to be a hero." And she's like, "That is dumb. That is the dumbest thing you could have said."
I really liked the way she put the point across that, okay, your story's sad, but I don't agree with your moral values. And she asks her, "Okay, that bag of apples you've got, did you pay for those?" And it kind of was this like clincher of, you have a completely different moral mindset that I don't agree with, and I'm not going to be your friend.
It is interesting that Kyoko's reaching out at this point, because once she realized that they're both victims of Kyubey, in her mind, she no longer wants to battle and kill for this territory. It's flipped something in her. Mm-hmm. She actually feels bad for Sayaka and is trying to get her to see from her point of view. Things get worse for Sayaka. She goes to school. The violin boy is back. Things are going good. And Hitome, the girl that had almost committed suicide before, their other friend, comes up to her and is like, "Hey, I'm also in love with that guy. And look, you've known him longer. And if you like him, act on it, or I'm going to. You have 24 hours. And you know what? Respect to her. She knew she didn't she'd put in a lot of time. She was like, yeah, if you like him, you should totally be with him. I totally understand that. But I really want to be with him too, and I'm not going to sit around and wait for you to diddle daddle.
Mm-hmm.
And like we had said when we were talking about characters, this plus what Sayaka had just learned, that she is undead, basically just breaks her.
Yep.
It was hard on the first viewing to relate, but on the second viewing, I felt worse for her than I had, especially now that I knew where it was going. Because they go and she does another witch hunt with Madoka, and she can barely handle it. And it's something that's becoming clear that Sayaka sucks. She's not a good magical girl. She's not very powerful. She's strong enough to beat a familiar on her own, but the witches give her a lot of trouble. And she and Kyoko actually saves her in this fight. And she, pushes her off and like, no, I'll do this my own. And she goes into kind of a berserker mode where she's laughing, and she does what Kyubey had warned against. She turns off all her pain receptors and just like lets herself be mutilated while she mutilates the witch. And this episode ends with her like laughing hysterically as she's butchering it with her swords. It is rough.
Yeah.
This was really tough to watch.
Mm-hmm. You'll never see a magical girl do that except maybe in like Kill la Kill. But the kind of berserker rage.
While she's going, things get worse for her. She throws away the grief seed, gives it to Kyoko, doesn't want it. I'm not restoring my magic, even though she's using a ton of it to heal herself through all this. Because anything you do with your magical powers, no matter how special it was, comes out of your soul gem. It is your mana, right? So she's not refilling her mana bar. Things are getting worse for her. She freaks out on Madoka, leaves her behind.
Which is interesting because when she runs, she's like, why am I doing this? And it did feel a bit out of character for her. And it lends credence to Jeremy's theory that it magnifies your bad traits. Because she's like, why am I pushing Madoka away? Why am I admonishing her? But in the moment, it felt extremely sincere. Like she just did not want her around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I saw her do that and I was thinking, okay, she's lashing out. Yeah, I get it. But she wants her friend to basically just pick up the burden that she herself is cursing. And you know that Sayaka would never want Madoka to do that.
Right.
And so, yeah, it seems it's way overboard for lashing out.
I mean, there's a lot of scenes in this episode of characters having brief conversation. Kyubey talking to Hamura and being like, what's up with you? Starting to think there's something up with you. Hitome tells the boy how she feels, so they start dating. Sayaka's not going to school, and her soul gem is growing dark. There's a really intense scene on a subway where she's on the train, and these two guys are talking about their women's and they're like, this is like, this language comes out of nowhere for this anime. This has been Sweet Girls. These guys are talking about dumb ABs.
Yeah, very graphic.
And Sayaka confronts them and kind of says this thing like, I was trying to save people, but now I wonder, why would I want to do that? And you're like, okay, what's going on? And like her form gets all weird for a second. Hamura actually tries to kill her, and Kyoko stops her at one point in this episode. Hamura like goes and is like, hey, here's a grief seed, just heal yourself. Nope, not gonna do it. Okay, then fine, I'm just gonna shoot you in the head. I'm gonna get rid of you. And Hamura yells at Madoka because she knows something's gonna happen soon. Then it's gonna push Madoka to the edge, and she just can't handle it. Is this where? Yeah, this is where Hamura shoots Kyubey. This is an amazing scene. This is one of my favorites. Kyubey comes to Madoka and is convinced her to take the contract again. And right before they start, Hamura shows up and shoots the little
No, when you say shit, it is the most confusing scene because we still aren't sure what her power is. Kyubey looks like he's been shot by a shotgun that can fire 50 cal beads. Like because it's instant. It's like just tons of holes in him, the size of like a bunch of pencils. 50 cal holes. It's just dead.
So imagine for a moment, like let's just explain what her power is really quick right now. She can pause time basically.
Right, because when you turn around, she's got a handgun.
Yep. Right. So how did she do this? Right? So you have to like picture in your mind exactly what she did here. She paused time and she just emptied that entire clip into Kyubey, and every bullet just kind of stops in time, and then she probably put another clip in, emptied that clip, and then reactivated time. Like, that is so intense. She didn't just walk up and hit him with a couple of bullets to the head or anything. Just like, that's awesome.
Yeah, Swiss cheese.
Yep.
And Madoka's like, why would you kill him? Oh, and she's like, hey, quit. Don't worry about it. Madoka leaves. Another Kyubey shows up. Eats the old Kyubey. And is like, you know I have too many spare bodies for you to do this, right?
But it is kind of annoying.
Yeah. And she does know, is the interesting thing. She's like, yeah, I know. And this is where we learn Kyubey's what he's truly called. He's an incubator, which is, I think his race is incubators, is what they call themselves. And this specific one is Kyubey. But it's kind of hard to tell if they're all one hive mind or how this actually works.
I got the impression that what we're seeing and calling Kyubey is just like an apparatus that is used within the petri dish, basically. And he's got lots and lots of copies of it. Think of it like a Q-tip that you move something around in a petri dish, right? That's how I always envisioned it. I never thought that he was actually that incubator applied necessarily to the hand controlling the body, so much as the mechanism of the body itself. I could be wrong, but that was my interpretation.
This episode ends on a really dark note because Kyoko finds Sayaka and her soul gem is completely black. She sheds one tear, it hits it, and she starts to transform. And freaking Kyubey, the episode ends with Kyubey up on like this scaffolding or crane above the city. And he's like, hey, do you know why we call them magical girls? Because they're gonna become witches. Yeah. And what's a young witch? Just a magical girl. Like, to the audience, it's the biggest middle finger ever.
Yes.
It is a fantastic reveal that was done extremely well, because from episode 4, I was actually guessing this twist, and you guys did a good job of not spoiling this for me. And this was a fantastic reveal, because I was like, as Sayaka started to descend, it's like, that's where witches go. She's going to turn into a witch, isn't she? Oh my god!
You see, like, the grief seed symbol appearing over her,
right?
Yep. Yeah. So cool.
Hamura manages to get Kyoko out of there, and they flee. And Madoka learns what happened, and everyone and Kyubey reveals the truth about witches. Madoka goes home that night, and this could be my favorite scene. I've named a couple, but this one's so good. Kyubey comes to the window, and you just see his silhouette, and he's like, "Can I come inside?" Madoka never says yes, and they start talking about, hey, I know I didn't tell you, but come on. Use your logic. You should have figured this out, and it's not that big a deal. You're freaking out about nothing. But while they're talking, especially, I found it almost based on Madoka's reaction to what he was saying. He's in her room in just different spots every time the camera changes. He's up on the shelf with the dolls. He's at the end of the bed and the thing. And then when she gets really upset, he's back outside at the window. It's so creepy. Jeremy, I think you pointed out it's similar to like vampires.
Yeah. It reminded me of, like, in a lot of the lore about vampires where you have to actually invite them in. They can't enter without an invitation. And it was, also, one of the things that I really got as a sense of this was how much time how long that conversation must have lasted. It probably lasted all night. Yeah,
because he flat out explains why he's there and why he's offering contracts, which I found absolutely fascinating. That, and this is why it kind of came down for me: is Cube a bad guy or not? Is he a villain? And I honestly think no. I think he's there to harvest energy, and it's for the good of the entire universe. And he makes a very compelling argument. It's very much like the train track situation. You know, if you don't do anything, the train's going to go down the track and kill 5 people. But you can switch lanes, and it will only kill 1 person on the other side. It felt very much like that he was there for the overall good of the universe, and that Madoka's sacrifice would not be in vain. Yeah. All she has to do is help the universe and make a contract with him.
Yeah, and especially like when you consider that we've learned up to this point even that Madoka is on orders of magnitude more powerful than any other magical girl. He keeps bringing this up. It's why he's hounding her.
Right? Yeah,
her potential
will become the most powerful magical girl.
Yeah, and so he keeps presenting it in such a way that, you know, if you really carry it forward, she would be able to provide enough energy that they'd probably not need to make magical girls anymore.
You know, we didn't mention that. I didn't mention it. The reason they need this energy is because his race discovered that the universe is coming towards entropy, and it's basically heat death, where there's just no more energy and the universe goes cold and everything dies. And so they've been looking for a way to replenish that energy.
Now,
every time
they found it in young girls in puberty. And their emotions.
Okay, that is the one thing in this entire equation that just is so hysterical to me as like, okay, that's contrived, but it works so well. And like this super advanced race that has all these abilities, and there's like a whole community of them. He's like, when Earth gets advanced enough, you can join us all. We're all so much more advanced than you, but we need the energy of your young girl emotions.
Also, your emotions, we consider it a mental disease or something like that.
Yes,
exactly.
Which is fascinating about Cube is that we find out he's sociopathic and along with his entire race, which makes this even like astoundingly better because you have all these highly emotional prepubescent girls and they've got all these just running emotions, and you have this emotionless shadow in the background manipulating things, but he can't understand a thing these girls are talking about.
Yep.
You gotta understand in this scene, I mean, if you've seen it, you know, but he's force-feeding images into Madoka's head to prove his point. It's not just saying this. He's like, hey, but look at Joan of Arc burning at the stake. Didn't that help him? And one of his best points is, look what you guys do to livestock. Sure, you give them a gentler life. They're not in any danger. They're much more comfort than they'd ever be if they were out in the wild. But you're going to kill them at the end. And she's like, wait, so we're just livestock? He's like, no, we treat you much better. We ask you first.
We ask you if you'd like to become livestock.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, he's not wrong.
No.
Yeah.
I was going to ask earlier, like, am I a bad person if I kind of agree with Cube? Like, I get where he's coming from. Given the entire situation, I can't say I would disagree with if that was the only solution. I don't know.
It's like I said, when I watched this the second time, I studied Cube and I approached it from, and it's funny that he mentioned livestock because I forgot he did that, a cattle rancher. And he's milking these cows, and when they dry up, he's going to take the meat to market. And it's not personal against the cow. He's not mad at the cow. Like when they said they didn't want to be magic girls, Cube's not upset that they wasted his time. He's like, all right, I'll go. Bye. See ya.
Find someone else.
Yeah, that's your choice, and I could care less. Even though he definitely is manipulating, trying to get a hold of Madoka's magic. which we're going to find out a little more here in a minute. But yeah, I can't disagree with the guy, especially when he's right. He gave them a choice. Now, he definitely hides things.
Oh, yeah.
Knowing that it'll affect the outcome.
Yeah, that's what makes him sinister, but I can't call him evil because of his motives. I just think that he's definitely untrustworthy. But like I said before, he throughout the entire show, he never outright told a lie. He never told an untruth.
Was there, in his initial description of what that entropy was it just the universe entropy, or did it have something to do with the proportion of other races and how quickly they're causing entropy? Because I remember there being some relation to that.
He said something about, like, we're using more energy than we're making.
Right.
In the galaxy. And so we're hurtling towards entropy. And then we found this one race that makes more energy than it uses. And then we all use so that we can actually fix this problem.
Yeah.
See, that's very interesting because that puts a little bit of a different light on it, because if it's not somebody who's engaging in using the energy, but they're the ones paying for the energy, that's a little bit more difficult to understand. But still, the cost, although there is a point later where, the cost might be much, much greater than just a few magical girls here and there. Yeah. And he's still okay with that too. So yeah, that's interesting. Okay. I got to reevaluate this, but later.
I'm gonna push us forward. They have to go back, and it's Kyoko who comes up with a plan. Who's like, "Hey, Madoka, you go in and you try to talk to her, and I'll try to save her." And this comes from Kyubey too. She goes to Kyubey and is like, "Is there a way to save her?" He's like, "There's no way I know of." Well, is it possible? Well, it's not impossible. And we find out that this is very much a manipulation. He actually completely admits to it at this point, that he very much wants Kyoko to die. And he lets her, he never lies, but he lets her believe that she has a chance at Sayaka. So her and Madoka go in, they battle with Sayaka, they lose. Hamura manages to save Madoka, but Kyoko gives her life to kill Sayaka and end it. So they die. And Kyubey reveals the whole point of that was there is a super witch coming to town. And they've been mentioning it a couple of times actually through the anime. And if no one else is left, I wrote it down and I'll try to say it later, but I'm not going to go right now.
Purgasnat. No.
Purgasnot.
Well, Purgasnot.
Purgasnot. That's right.
It sounds like something about snot.
All these witches have names like that. It's just I couldn't read them in the weird writing they chose to make, and I was like, I'm not trying.
And also before this point, Hamura made it very clear to Kyoko that she couldn't take it on alone.
One magic girl can't beat it. Yeah. Definitely need more than that.
There's also, just very quickly to mention, like, Homura has this awesome room that looks like it's floating in the white nothingness of a void, and it's got like all these digital displays everywhere. And I started paying attention to them, and I mean, an obvious one that stands out is even in the very beginning when we start to see Homura's room, which is fairly early on in the series, you see the silhouettes of 5 magical girls, and you have not yet been introduced to Kyoko. And so it's kind of a telling moment where you're like, wait a minute, I should pay attention to this because Homura's got more information than she's letting on, and we get to see what it is here. But yeah, anyways.
What is the pendulum?
The pendulum? To me, it just always symbolized keeping time, like maybe a stable moment, kind of how she stores like her guns inside of her time shield.
Okay. It's probably part of her power then.
Yeah. I assume this room was part of her power because it did not seem like a normal room.
No, it's like a pocket dimension.
But yes, that's exactly the impression I got.
Okay.
We then go to the flashback of Hamura's story.
It's fantastic.
I want to do it justice, but I also got to get through it fast, so I'm a little bit stuck here. So we see Hamura come to school for the very first time. It's almost a beat for beat from the beginning of this anime.
I almost didn't recognize her.
But she's in pigtails, and she's in glasses, and she's and she's sickly. Madoka is super nice to her when she helps her to the nurse's office, but she's been out of school for weeks, so she doesn't know how to do math problems. And in the first episode, she's like doing all the math problems extra bonus material. And here she's struggling in PE, all very opposite of the beginning. And then later we see her fall into a witch's labyrinth, and Madoka and Mommy show up and save her. So this is clearly a different timeline that we're dealing with. And she finds out about magic girls, and this giant witch that's coming shows up at the end of this timeline, and Madoka loses.
First, Mommy dies, and then
Mommy dies, and Madoka is dying. And so Hamura makes the wish that she can go back and protect Madoka instead of having been protected by Madoka. She wants to change this so she can be a magic girl and protect Madoka. She travels back in time and restarts the timeline, goes into a Groundhog's Day situation. At first she shows up, she's like, I'm a magic girl too, guys. And everyone's like, wait, who is this? It's kind of a montage, right? Of her getting better, of her learning to fight with her power. And there's this great thing where they're like, yeah, your time freeze is cool, but you don't really have any offensive capability. So she sneaks over to the mafia and steals all their weapons.
Nope.
And she's got this little pocket dimension inside because like her little time machine thing is a shield as well.
Yeah, she can put this like a whole arsenal inside there and reach in and pull out like a bazooka or grenades.
Just gun after gun after gun.
Yep, and she's even like teaching herself how to make bombs and stuff herself. Crazy.
This time, though, when the witch comes, Madoka loses and becomes a witch herself. So she has to go back.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the way Kyubey and her were talking, it was like doomsday level witch. Like, no one was killing this witch, and this witch was probably going to destroy.
It was going to wipe the planet out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the impression I got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And was that like, well, I guess we're done here.
Yeah.
Was that on the second time through? Is that?
I can't remember if it was second or later.
I think it was later.
It didn't give, like, these montages were not given the impression that they were one after the other, but like a section of montages, like went, time passed, went more, anyways, go on, try.
In this third one we're showing, it is after Sayaka turns into a witch. All the magic girls realize the truth, and this is the one where Mommy freaks out and shoots Kyoko dead immediately. Like, oh, we gotta stop the witches, and we're the witches. And she's gonna kill Hamura, and Madoka ends up killing Mommy. And I consider that like the worst timeline, where Mommy loses her mind and just starts murdering.
Yes. I tell you, it shocked me when I saw that the first time. Yep.
But it made so much sense.
Yeah, everything about Mommy, every moment that Mommy did something crazy, it like crystallized her as a really, really cool character in my head.
But unstable. Wow.
Yes, completely. Beyond her limits.
Yeah.
So one of the timelines ends with Hamura and Madoka both about to turn into witches. They've battled to their limit. And Hamura's like, let's just turn into witches together and we'll just destroy the world, like whatever. And Madoka uses the last grief seed to cure Hamura's soul gem. And she asks Hamura to kill her. And Hamura has to literally murder Madoka in this time and before she goes back. So when Madoka's dying, she's like, please go back and stop me from ever being a magical girl. Don't let me do this. And that becomes Hamura's mission now. It's not just to save her, it's to stop her from ever starting this. And this is where she drops the glasses, she changes her hairstyle to the one we're used to, and she stops using the Yakuza weapons, and she goes to the military and steals their weaponry. And she becomes this, monster of a fighter who can hit you with 100 bazookas at once when she wants.
Yep. Yeah, this is where she starts saying, I don't need any help. I don't need any other magical girls to work with me and fight alongside me. I can take every witch by myself, and there'll be no reason for anyone else to do it. And, oh, God, it's so good how this ties back to the beginning, because in that beginning dream where we see Homura, and we don't know who she is yet, right? Because Madoka's standing next to Kyubey looking over at Homura. Homura's mouth is moving, but we hear no sound. And I remember the first time I watched that, I was like, what is she saying? What is she saying? Well, we get to hear what she's saying.
She's saying, don't do it. Don't listen to him. And you're right. This is the one where Kyubey says to Madoka, if you become a magic girl, you'll be able to save her. She does. And then we flash to after that fight. Madoka's now a witch. And Kyubey says, well, I guess the world's screwed. Bye.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, and he says, wow, that's more powerful than I thought she'd be. She killed it with one shot.
Yeah.
Wow.
And now she's a world ender. And that's the last timeline Hamura's had before she came to this one.
Which the first thing she does is, because Madoka asked her to not let her become a magical girl, she's like, I'm going to hunt Kyubey.
Yeah,
which
she's
a great callback to the first episode.
Right.
Yep.
So now Kyubey has realized that she's a time traveler, and he points out the whole reason Madoka is so special is your fault. Like, she would just be another random magic girl that wouldn't matter. But because magic girl power is based on your karma destiny level, like how important you are to...
Karmic potential, I think is what
that because time keeps resetting and all of fate matters on whether Madoka survives or not, she's the most important thing in all universes. And so she's infinitely more powerful now. And Hamura's like, oh no, I've made it worse.
Yep.
Because now she's stuck in this loop of, if she gives up and dies, then Madoka becomes world leader. Or she's going to continue to fail for eternity.
Yep.
Oh, so this is it's actually this scene where Kyubey comes to Madoka again. This is where he tells her about the livestock and tells her about the entire history of witches, tells her the whole truth. And then Madoka and Hamura meet, and Hamura tells her the whole truth about, like, I've been doing this over and over again. This is going to be bad. And yes, Blurgerbashnot is coming.
I love it.
Valpurgisnacht.
Yep. There is a solution for Hamura. Something that it would be unthinkable for her to do.
Just kill Madoka.
If she just killed Madoka, it'd be over.
But that's not the point. Her wish is to save Madoka.
I know. Just saying. The Kyubey here.
Actually, you're kind of wrong, because Kyubey points out to Madoka, if Hamura quits, she will immediately become a witch. The only thing she has left is winning. If she killed Madoka, she would become a super powerful witch. Maybe not world ending.
Actually, because of her wish, I don't think she's capable of it.
Oh, really? Well, that's an interesting... I didn't think of that. That's possible.
I disagree. We've seen her almost turn into a witch a couple times.
No, incapable of killing Madoka, because it would go directly against her wish.
Oh, okay.
That's possible.
Yeah, once she turns into a witch, I think all bets are off as far as wishes.
I misunderstood what you said. Yeah. The witch shows up. The town is actually evacuated because they think the weather's so bad, but it's this witch who doesn't have a labyrinth. She's so powerful, she's in the real world, is what they've said.
Her physical manifestation is one of the best unsettling, weird things I've seen.
It's like this giant clockwork thing, but if you notice, it's actually just her upside down, and the clockwork is her dress. But what you see is like, oh, there's this weird clock gears thing turning, but oh no, it's we're looking at the wrong way.
Yep, and she's like laughing the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Hamura's fight with it is awesome, like driving trucks into its face. And
This is exactly how I would imagine someone with time travel abilities that knows exactly where things are going to go to be. Yeah. I'm going to set up trap after trap after trap after trap after trap to try and kill this thing.
When it falls in the ground and there's 100 red dots around it of mines that just...
That was awesome.
How did those mines get there? Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yep. I did wonder a little bit about the vehicles when she would like ride them and they'd have a purple glow around them, and then she'd be sailing through the sky with them. I wondered, how is she moving them? Was it just the momentum? The vehicles were going in the correct direction?
No. So whatever she's touching is not affected by the time freeze. So I think that was just a visual representation of that. Because when she would jump off of it, right? Yeah, when she would jump off of it, the purple would go away.
Well, the reason I was wondering is because if a person was driving it, I'm wondering what they would do at that point. You know what I mean? Like, how is the vehicle still moving is what I was wondering. Because sometimes they were even moving, like, not on the ground. It was like they carried their momentum forward with no resistance.
Don't ruin my coolness, man.
I know. It was a great scene. but I wondered about that. It seemed to clash with her abilities a little bit.
Madoka decides to go help. She can't stand by and do nothing. It's just not who she is. Her mother slaps her as she tries to leave, but eventually decides, she trusts her daughter to do the right thing.
Go make another mistake.
Yeah.
That bugged me as a parent.
Yeah. My daughter turned to me and goes, would you trust me to go? No! Get your butt inside. I'm going to die. I'm protecting you. That's my job.
Yep. What can you do?
Yeah, 12-year-old girl.
Exactly.
So Madoka shows up. Hamura is literally about to turn into a witch. She's on the verge of giving up. She's pinned. She's like, there's no way I can ever do this. And Madoka shows up and is like, hey, I'm sorry. I know you told me not to, but I'm becoming a Magica girl. And her wish is quite special. She wishes to erase all witches before they're born in all of time. And Kyubei's like, wait a minute.
Whoa.
This completely undoes our entire...
Not only are you changing the laws of the universe, you are changing time itself. And we're treated to beautiful visuals of this wish happening, which is basically girls about to turn into witches and then Madoka flying out of the sky and like sucking the darkness out of it, and then they just disappear instead. And then we get another visual that Hamura, I guess, I'm assuming because of her time travel powers, that she's displaced enough to see, but I guess we just need someone to view this wish.
I think Madoka pulled her into this thing she's doing.
Well, that could be too.
Because Kyubei makes it very clear she's got the powers of the gods now.
I have another theory too. Homura, Madoka isn't the only person who the threads are tied to. And the reason I say that is because, yes, Madoka was the target of Homura's, gotta protect her, everything's focused on her and everything. But all of that is channeled through Homura's movements, Homura's choices. Every single time she skips a timeline, all of her choices matter because they influence Madoka. Whereas you couldn't say the same thing about Sayaka and Mami and the others, but Homura you could, because she's directly influencing Madoka every step of the way, trying to almost control her. And so I kind of think that in a way, like, she's nowhere near as powerful as Madoka, but I think that she has an intrinsic amount of additional astral threads tied to her because of her meddling as well. So I think that might contribute to why she's out there too, is that she's strong enough to retain an identity while Madoka is doing this.
And also, probably that's a decent explanation for why she also remembers Madoka after this.
So one of my favorite parts of this is when Hamura sees the end fate of Madoka. That is what Kyubei calls it. And it's this giant comet streaking across the sky, and it's full of just darkness. It's all the witches mixed together. And Madoka's going to turn into the ultimate witch, the universe-ending witch. And she doesn't, because Madoka comes and takes that witch away. And Kyubei points out she's no longer a person. She has become a law of physics. She is a principle of the universe now. They call her the law of cycles, actually. And it changes everything. Madoka's final thing to do before her humanity disappears is say goodbye to Hamura and give her red ribbons. And then there's a scene where Madoka goes to Sayaka when she's about to turn into a witch, and they watch a concert together of the boy playing the violin. I've pointed out I'm not a huge Sayaka fan. She's one of my least favorite characters. This second viewing, this scene got me. Just the change of such a dark fate to having your best friend guide you to a better one hit me hard. I don't and it caught me off guard because I know this scene. I'm aware this scene exists. I've watched it before, and this time I was like, oh man, I'm okay. Deep breath.
I'm not crying. You're crying.
I wasn't gonna cry.
The despair.
So then the question is that I guess her wish stayed, right?
Which one, Madoka or Homura?
No, Sayaka's.
Sayaka.
Yes, your wishes still come true.
Okay.
And it's funny because we end up in a new universe, right? A new timeline where Madoka's law of cycles is in place, and Mommy is still alive because there was no witch to kill her, and Kyoko's still alive because Sayaka wouldn't have become a witch to kill her. But Sayaka is gone, and they talk about how no one understands it, but when a magic girl reaches the end of her time, she just disappears. And then we see Hammer and Kyubey talking, and they're working together. And she even points out, like, yeah, in the past we didn't like you very much, and she's telling him about how it used to be about witches and stuff. He's like, wow, that would work really good. And to be honest, we don't know why things work the way they work now. It doesn't make logical sense.
I remember when I saw this the first time, I was like, don't tell him that.
Don't tell Kyubey.
What is wrong with you?
Yeah. And I said it again, the same thing this time.
Yeah, so instead of witches, now they're fighting what's called wraiths, which are manifestations of localized accumulation of dread and sadness.
Right. Because without witches, there's no expression of humanity's darkness, and so it's just taken a new form.
Which seems odd because now it's like the magical girls are collectors of everyone else's transformative between hope and despair, minute fractional amounts of negative energy. It's a very different system. It's very weird. Like
so instead of grief seeds, they get wraith cubes.
Yeah. So little black void cubes.
And there's scenes of Hamura visiting. She remembers Madoka and obviously the other timeline because of her time's traveling powers, and she visits Madoka's family and stuff. What I really loved about this ending is that being on a podcast where I argue about logic versus emotion and consistency all the time with you guys, you can't argue this. She changed the law of physics the way she wanted it to be. You just can't. You just got to be like, what can you do?
Yep. Although I do have a question. Somewhat unrelated. The question is, we get to see this huge deal when Madoka changes the laws of physics because it's far-reaching, going back and altering, history.
All the time, right?
Mm-hmm. So it basically rewrites the universe, is the way Kyubey puts it, and the universe is kind of sinking back up into its new state. However, my question is with Homura and her timeline jumping. We talked a little bit in the pre-show. I know that you think that she's like creating a new timeline. Do you think would have any kind of greater ramification, or do you think it's like a rewind and so it requires less altering so they don't have to have this weird universe reset? Because it didn't seem like there was when Homura would jump back in time that month and redo it again and again and again and again. It's kind of resetting and forcing the universe to sync back up again, though not as drastically. So do you think it was doing the same thing on a smaller scale?
Not necessarily. And because of the whole Madoka getting more powerful thing, like that was multiple universes tying together. Well, this is literally just a wipe out and reset. And even Hamura doesn't have time travel powers no more.
What are her new powers then?
She has a bow. She has Madoka's bow.
That's right.
Yeah, she has what they call like when she uses multiple, like her ability multiple times, she just gets stronger and stronger and stronger with it, which is a really odd. Makes me wonder what her wish was.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Because if there was no witch, then she didn't fight Valpurgismont, which means
she would have had a whole different thing.
Yeah.
There is an after credits scene where it shows her walking in a wasteland full of wraiths and giant wings grow out behind her in the art style of the Witch's Labyrinth. And that's how this series ends. So we'll probably comment on that in a minute. I think we should go to our final reviews unless you guys have some more or less thoughts on this ending.
I thought it was actually very well done and very complete. It's kind of the example that I love to give of what I appreciate about a good ending, and just kind of wrapping up the story with some good closure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great.
Okay, so let's go to final reviews. Jason, you picked it.
I didn't find a lot of problems with it, so I'm just gonna flat out give it a 5. This is a top 10 list, easy. I'm sad I hadn't watched it till now, but it was actually kind of exciting to get to watch it for the first time, where I was going to talk about it. So that was pretty neat. Yeah, for all the reasons that we've given so far, fantastic anime.
Yep. It was really funny in these last like 3 episodes. There is a lot of Homura and Madoka whining and crying and doing the really high pitched. And Tanya's trying to work in the other room, like right behind my speakers, right? And she keeps coming out and saying, "What are you watching?" She knows I'm watching Madoka Magica. She watched it with me the first time I watched it, and so she's like, "Is it not over yet? Is it not over?" She loved it, but she's like, "It's so sad. It's so sad. Like, and it's so creepy. Make them stop crying." It was great. I loved it. It was super funny.
Make them stop crying.
Make them stop crying. I'm like, I'm trying. I'm getting to the end of the episodes. They're just not going to stop until the episodes are over.
They are magic girls, and you will leave them alone.
That's right. Don't be mean to them. But yeah, 5 out of 5. This is a fantastic anime. The score, the art, the sensibility of it, it's just great deconstruction. And I mean deconstruction too, not like in the funny, art deconstruction.
Right. 5 out of 5 for me too. He was more so than I would have thought, because usually it's second viewing and it's like, hey, I know what's going to happen. I'll write it all down and I'll give my first viewing thoughts. There was more to see on a second viewing. There's layers to this anime that was fun to pick out. There's things these guys saw that after 2 viewings I still haven't picked up. This is a good story. This is top of its class. Okay. Okay. So I mentioned this on our Twitter account. We are going to talk about, for a second, Rebellion. This is the sequel movie, but a little bit of a twist here. I said we were going to talk about it and go full spoilers. We're not. We're going to do that next week in the minisode. So for now, we're going to leave you with our non-spoiler reviews of Rebellion. Like I said, which is the actual sequel. There's 3 movies. 2 of them are retellings. Rebellion is the sequel to Madoka Magica. Jason, I want to know yours. What's your non-spoiler review?
I have mixed feelings about this, because this pulled me in just as hard as the first 4 or 5 episodes of the original. And then I feel the ending just fell flat on its face. About midway through the movie, it just didn't know what it wanted to do with itself. The best way to describe it is the 12-episode anime was a complete package story that did not need a sequel. This story needs a sequel. It's not complete.
Okay. Jeremy, how about you?
I liked it because it did a good job of showcasing characters that we'd seen and grown fond of, but maybe didn't get to see enough of, or get to see encountering each other. How would they have fought if they ever got a chance to? Things like that. I liked seeing those opportunities. Like Jason said, I love the way it pulls you in. I love the setting. I love the idea. I love where they went with it. But I do have to agree that the end of the movie, I wasn't satisfied, and I have questions. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm left at a loss for words there, but I still liked it. I still there was also something in the middle that didn't seem right too. But anyways, we'll talk about it in the minisode.
Okay. I liked it more than you guys. The full story is, the first time I watched Madoka Magica, I got to the end and I was like, that's the perfect ending. This is so wrapped up so completely. I didn't watch the movie. Jeremy's like, I'm going to go watch the movie. My kids are like, I'm going to go watch the movie. I'm like, I'm not. I don't want anything to touch this. This is perfect. Leave it, let it lie. This time around, I was like, okay, I'm going to watch it. I still think I was right that first time. It was the perfect ending. But the movie, to me, if Madoka Magica is the stab in your heart, this movie is the knife twist. And there are themes that they explore that I thought were really interesting. when brought up simultaneously with Madoka Magica, and they kept that the level of detail in the background art and stuff hit new highs in the movie. So I'm excited for the minisode to talk about what I saw when we watched it and really get into the nitty gritty. I can definitely see what they mean in the ending. It's kind of sloppy, but I think I still like it. So we'll 1 week. If you haven't watched it yet, you have 1 week. We'll talk about it in the minisode. Good luck, guys. So the anime that we are watching next week before we leave for good, Jeremy will tell us what it is.
It's called The Comic Artist and His Assistant, and it's 12 episodes long. Should be great.
So that's Jeremy's choice, and we'll be watching that.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, we Twitter at Baka Podcast, email the animebakaclub@gmail.com. Leave a comment wherever you found this. We gotta go. We're out of time. Let's say goodbye.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Sayonara.